Hi, my name is Bartek. I am founder of e-Homestead and welcome to our tutorial about management small farms. It is a second episode where we will be talking about more logical blocks in our garden. In the previous episode we were talking about the whole concept how to design our farm, but today we'll go deeper and we'll see how it can be managed by a Homestead software. So let's get started. Our farm is divided in three logical blocks. It's a backyard, it's a front yard, and also a greenhouse. Now we have to calculate how many beds we have. That will give us information how much space for planting we have. I suggest to keep all beds with the same size within at least within one logical block. And following by Mr. Elliot Coleman, I suggest to use width of the single bed as 75 centimeters. It's around 30 inches. And the distance, the walkways between beds, around 45 centimeters is around 18 inches. That will make our life easier because 75 centimeters is the length that the adult should be able to make as one step. So if we have to, for example, during harvesting, go between first and second bed, we can do this over the bed if it's that width. So it's very optimal, and I suggest to use that width. So now it's time to do some small calculations. This bed has 8 meters, so it is 800 centimeters. If the one bed has 75 centimeters and the walkway has 45, so it is divided by 120 centimeters. So take a look on a calculator. Yes, so it's 8 divided by 1.2. It is equal to 6.6 period. So, of course, it is better to have the integer values without the decimal part. So we calculated path with a bed, but we have to remember that amount of beds is always smaller than the walkways, with some exceptions. For example, here, if you have an access to your bed, to your garden from outside that block that we want to use, maybe you don't need the first walkway. If you need, so you have to calculate this as well. And here we did a calculation, one walkway, one bed. And that's fine for the very first and all except the last one, because in the last one we need a walkway on the opposite side as well. Let's assume that you have some, let's say, composting area here or some bushes, and you don't have an access to your garden beds from that side. So let's say that we will have 6 beds here. The same calculations we have to do for this one. Yes, so it's 5 divided by 1.2. Yeah, so it's a 4, right? It is a 4. It's a 4 beds. Let's assume that our greenhouse is the same size as a backyard. So we will have 6 beds as well. So now it's time to think about smaller logical blocks. In a homestead, we call them blocks within a site. Yeah, this is a single site, and within a site, we may prepare some garden bed blocks. For example, here you would like to have a one row with tomatoes, and as we know, tomatoes don't like the overhead watering. So let's make the tomatoes as a one logical block, and here we will have another one. Where we will plant some carrots and all other veggies that they don't care about the overhead sprinklers and so on. Here we have to use the pipes for watering our tomatoes. In a garden, in a greenhouse, let's say it will be one logical block. Everything will be watered by the drop lines or some pipes. And here we will have also just one group. Usually the herbs don't care about the overhead sprinklers. Sometimes it is even very useful, especially during the hot summer when we can cool down our veggies and that allows them to grow well. So now let's go to a homestead, and we will see how to fill in our forms to fit our design. Okay, so we prepared our garden. We know that we have a few logical blocks and we have some sites. In our backyard site, we would like to have two bed blocks. One because of the drop lines designed for tomatoes, and in the second section we may want to use some sprinklers, overhead irrigation. So that's why we need to define two logical blocks. That's helpful to avoid planting tomatoes inside of overhead irrigation that may cause some fungus later on. So let's do those blocks. First one, let's call this a drop line. If our farm is more complex, you have more than we have just 3 sites: backyard, front yard, and a greenhouse. But if you have multiple sites in different locations, you can add some extra information here. Our farm is simple, no beds so far, and add one more. This one is how we can call it, like let's call this overhead. Overhead is good. And now we need to define a beds within the block. As I mentioned, I suggest to use the same size for every single bed. It doesn't matter for a homestead because it will use the values that you provide here, but it's easier for us as a human beings to estimate and to make some predictions. So we are in a drop line section, so let's make a bed 75 centimeters width, and here we have our 15 meters length. That's one bed here in a drop lines section. In the overhead we will have 5, so let's define them. It's the first one, 75, 15. Here's also a padding. Padding you may want to use if you have, for example, raised beds with the wooden frame, so you may want to add some spacing from the borders, so it will be subtract from the width. During calculations of amount of plants you can plant or seed here, but We don't have any raised beds, so I will keep it 0. Yeah, and we have to do this exercise for all our beds. There's the third one, 0.75, 15 meters, all without padding. Fourth one, exactly the same. Now we do some labor things, but later on they will save us a lot of time, because a homestead can do all these calculations for us. Okay, so here is our backyard at our home. We have 2 logical sections. One is for the drop lines, the second is for overhead irrigation. Then we have 5 garden beds, all the same length, width, no paddings. Yeah, in total we have 6. And we have to do the same exercise for front yard and greenhouse. Okay, I did it for all our sites. In the backyard we have 6. On the front yard we have just 4 beds, and in a greenhouse we have 6 in a 1 bed block. We can add as many blocks as we want later on, but so far let's keep it simple. So let's summarize what we did so far. In the first episode we took a look around our farm to figure out the shades of all the buildings, high trees. We estimated how much space we may use for our sites. We decided to have 1 greenhouse, backyard and front yard. In the backyard we want to have 1 line for tomatoes and other for other crops. In the front yard we decided to have some herbs and radishes, small veggies. In the greenhouse we don't know yet, we will figure out this later, but we know how our farm looked like. In the next episode we'll take a closer look into crop planning. Here we don't have plants so far, and that's what we have to define to be able to do some calculations, but that will be in the next episode. In this episode it's that's all. So thank you for watching and see you next time.